Minister Ghani was appointed Minister of State at the Department for Business and Trade, responsible for Investment Security Unit at the Cabinet Office on the 7th of February 2023-ish, I think, maybe. In terms of the government departments, they have shifted and changed quite a lot over the last little while, but I've had immense pleasure working with Minister Ghani over the last while with regards to the critical minerals strategy here in the UK. And I'm really pleased to welcome her to the stage to give us insight as to what it is we are up to here in the UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and hopefully the tech is working. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you all here. And I've just heard what you're going to be listening and learning over the next few days. And actually, I'm blown away that I'm allowed to join Sarah. I feel like I'm the least academic person to be on this conference, but I want to thank you, Dr. Sarah Gordon, Sarah, and Satala for bringing us together today to discuss our complex raw material supply chains and the need to source these vital resources securely, responsibly, and sustainably in a fast-changing world, especially the critical minerals that are powering the technological revolution that is sweeping the planet. A cause that Sarah and her colleagues have led the way in championing and which I wholeheartedly support. Now, I know there may not be many obvious parallels between politics and the world of mineral extraction, but like miners, we government ministers occasionally need to dig ourselves out of some pretty big holes, pretty deep holes. And like politics at its best, mining and the mineral extraction industry have the power to change the world. After all, without critical minerals, our laptops or mobile phones just wouldn't work. The medical equipment that saves lives worldwide would be unusable. And the energy networks which keep our lights on and our economy humming would grind to a halt. Critical minerals are key to the battle against global warming, powering the electric vehicles and wind turbines that will move us away from fossil fuels. Building a cleaner, greener, more prosperous future for the United Kingdom, driving forward our huge push for net zero, creating new jobs and delivering a growth across the country. And they are vital to our national security, as laid bare by Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. Now, developing responsible, sustainable global supplies of raw materials is fundamental to our security and prosperity. This is not an option, it's a moral imperative. Not just because supply chains with high environmental, social and governance standards are more sustainable and resilient, reducing our vulnerability to future geopolitical shocks and levelling the playing field for responsible British businesses, but because they are better, not just for Britain, but for the world as a whole. And because it's the right thing to do, which is why this cause lies at the heart of the critical mineral strategy we launched last year, which Sarah played a key role in shaping. And of course, we've had the refresh since then. This is our blueprint for deepening and diversifying our supply chains as global competition for natural resources intensifies. And we are already making progress, providing support for green innovation through our Automotive Transformation Fund and targeting funding for critical mineral projects aimed at building innovative, resilient value chains across the UK and aiding a clean energy transition. But we know we must stay alive to rapidly changing challenges and opportunities that are emerging worldwide, and we're doing so, as demonstrated by the measures I unveiled as part of our refreshed delivery approach in March, which included the creation of an independent task and finish group for resilience in critical minerals to ensure the needs of industry is front and centre of our decision making in this field, and the launch of our new Circular Critical Mineral Supply Chains Fund to strengthen our access to rare earth elements and boost the circular economy. At the same time, we are building on Britain's deserved reputation as a global hub of innovation in this sector, harnessing our strengths as an international hub for mining finance and low carbon mining solutions, and making it easier for firms based across the United Kingdom to share their expertise globally through the trade agreements we are signing worldwide. We are using our freedom as an independent trading nation to place environmental, social and governance standards at the centre of these deals. We've agreed more than 70 so far, worth over 800 billion in UK trade, including free trade agreements with Australia and New Zealand, where I know many of you have extensive mining interests. These deals contain high environmental and labour standards and commitments to strengthen our cooperation, environmental protection and the circular economy. Meanwhile, our newly secured membership of CPTPP, one of the world's largest trading zones comprising 11 countries spanning Asia and the Americas, contains an ambitious environmental chapter together with binding provisions protecting workers' rights. And we are using our freedom to champion the cause of responsible, sustainable mineral extraction multilaterally too, joining forces with like-minded nations to drive this agenda forward worldwide through forums like International Energy Agency and the G7. And through our membership of the Sustainable Critical Minerals Alliance, alongside our like-minded partners, Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, and the US, which commits us to promoting high environmental, social, and governance standards and net zero mining practices. We've also reaffirmed our commitment to the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, which advocates for better global governance in this sector, trumpeting the benefits this brings for people and businesses globally. Because as the world's economy changes at breakneck speed, the mining industry will remain not only one of its greatest engines of growth, but one of its greatest drivers of change, leading the charge in developing and deploying responsible, sustainable business practices that are helping us forge a cleaner, greener, more secure and sustainable economic future. We want to share the benefits this brings across the United Kingdom and around the world, driven by the power of free enterprise. That's my goal as Minister of State for Business and Trade, and that is the goal of this government too. And that's why my door is always open to British businesses, and I'm so pleased to continue to have the critical minerals portfolio, to listen to your needs and learn from your experiences as we build a brighter, cleaner, more ethical future for this industry together. A responsible, sustainable future, a future driven by trade and investment, a future that delivers for us all. I am so grateful to be to participate today, and I look forward to taking some Q&As. And I must say that the focus of trust is not lost on a politician. This is something we grapple with daily, not just at elections. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Ghani. Round of applause, everybody, albeit virtual from the other side of our computer screens. Fantastic. Now, if anybody has any questions, please do feel free to pop them into chat or the Q&A or on YouTube or on any other channel that we have open at the moment. But Mr. Ghani, if I can just start with a question where I know that we've had many discussions over the last year or so with regards to mining, etc. As somebody who perhaps has come into exploring this sector in this space more recently than others, what are some of the key challenges you see for the materials sector at the moment that need to be addressed as fast as possible?
I think it goes back to the critical core of your conference, which is trust, which requires a huge amount of responsibility, which is responsibility to the communities where the minerals are mined from, a huge responsibility, not just from the companies that we know already address this, but transparency, so there can be confidence in the process end to end. And we need to think about the end user. It may even be a customer buying a mobile phone. They're going to want to know the exact impact the minerals that are on the mobile phones, and the impact they've had on the environment, the impact they've had on the communities where they're mined from. And the issue is that so many firms are doing this so well, but we only get to hear the stories of those that aren't doing well. So it's sort of responsibility, transparency, and just making sure the value added is back at the communities where they deserve it. And then being not defenseless, but robust in defending what we do and what we love. We're all in this sector because we're passionate about it. And we're in this sector because we know it's the only way that's going to drive innovative change across so many portfolios, whether it's health, let alone whether it's dealing with the net zero agenda. We're just going to have to be more confident and more robust talking about this in every forum that we can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And I can see the questions beginning to come in, so I'm going to pick and choose and try and feed them through to you. But with regards to that development of trust, and as you said, being prepared to actually defend what we're passionate about, is there a line in terms of being too aggressive with regards to defending and saying, well, surely you know that we need materials, rather than taking the time to listen to why somebody's got a slightly different opinion? Is there any advice that you can offer with regards to really listening to what someone's actually saying, rather than perhaps your immediate emotion to what somebody's saying?
What I find curious is the level of work that's already taking place in a sector, that's taking place across so many groups, whether it's environmental groups, NGOs, whether it's within those home countries or whether it's within those charities. So much work is taking place on ministerial level internationally too. And I think we have to listen to work out exactly what the concerns are at each and every point. But then we need to share that we are working collaboratively. So we're trying to make sure that when a nation is able to evidence how you can get to good ESG standards, that we then share that and promote that. And we can do that internationally, so no one country, one individual has to bear the burden. But it also means that we can ensure that we're delivering a unified message, regardless of where the concerns are coming from across the country. My point about not being too defensive is we've got a lot of good stories to tell. We've also got a very basic story to tell, which is explain why we do what we do. Because, you know, I always have a comment that occasionally I'll get a lot of, as a constituency MP, I get a lot of incoming, a lot of emails. People are emailing me and using technology. They wouldn't have that technology if we weren't mining. So it's trying to explain what is it that you need to live your life and how we're trying to deliver that in the best way possible. And of course, I'm reinforcing what we're doing internationally and trying to get as many partners to join those international forums as well, whether it's forums led by Canada or whether it's the Mineral Security Partnership that's led by the US. It's just making sure that we're present and promoting good practice.
And with regards to those different forums, do you see that there have been a lot of new ones that have sprung into existence over the last few years? Are there too many forums, or do you think it's exactly what we need at the moment?
So I've been responsible in the UK for critical minerals since last year, since last autumn. And prior to that, I was the rapporteur of the Science and Tech Committee at NATO for about 2 years. So I don't have as much experience as you do. So you probably think there are too many. I wasn't aware that people felt that they were burdensome. I do think they could be streamlined because I'm now being asked to be involved in so many. Now, the trouble with too many forums is that nobody knows exactly what they need to do. And then it's hard to hold people account because they can pick and choose which forums they want to be accountable to. So we need to make sure that we are being streamlined in that sense, making sure that the forums aren't being duplicated at all. Otherwise, we're allowing people that don't want to do the right thing sort of a backdoor exit out of there, as it were. But I must say, the forums I've attended, I was at the South African conference recently where the Mineral Security Partnership took place. I was in Canada recently, there was another international forum there took place. I thought the balance between what we're doing in the UK and what more we need to do in countries where a lot of those minerals are mined from was a very good balance, because our job was to listen and to share what we thought we had expertise in and see if it was of value. And also if there was any anxiety or lack of knowledge, how we could try to fit in that space and provide that expertise that's needed. So at the moment, I think we're okay, but I am slightly anxious that I'm being asked to speak at too many. What would be good if there is a duplication, that somehow we streamline that. And I'm hoping that the task and finish group that I've established through the Critical Mineral Refresh in the UK will provide us with a much more clearer, not only set of standards, but trying to make sure that the companies we're trying to hold to account, there's a clear way of measuring what they are doing. And those that are doing well, then we can try and promote those. And those that aren't doing so well, we can try and encourage them to do the right thing.
Great, thank you for that. Because I think with building on that question as well, in terms of the increased focus on minerals and materials that we've seen. So I mentioned earlier on when we first opened the conference earlier on today that having had the privilege of going to COP26 back in November 2021, and mining was barely mentioned or was actually almost removed from the discussion. And it's only really been sort of since then that we've seen this increase in focus with regards to minerals and materials, etc., here within the UK. So we've seen rapid change here, but also, of course, over the last year or so, massive change elsewhere. So, for example, in the US, the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, which is how we pronounce it. We don't say it the other way in the UK because it makes everybody duck. And then, of course, coming across into what's been going on in Europe with regards to the Critical Minerals Act. Do you feel that the fact that other nations around the world are really focusing in on materials is almost helping to increase the pace of everybody kind of saying, right, how do we actually solve these challenges?
I think, Sarah, people like you and I were seen as slightly nerdy, that we were talking that was complicated, it was a long-winded supply chain, and it was over in a corner. And now all of a sudden everything we've been banging on about has become front and center. And the amount of communication and the amount of work we do with Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister resides, Number 11, which is where the Treasury resides, is remarkable considering where we were a couple of years ago. Furthermore, the critical mineral refresh, which is the UK strategy now for critical minerals, wasn't published as a standalone for my department. It was published as a part of Downing Street, the Prime Minister's big policy strategy paper, something called Integrated Review, which is about defence and security and resilience. So all of a sudden, critical minerals is the heart of everything that we're trying to do across so many platforms. I'm also the Minister for Industry, and that's all the foundation industries: automotive, maritime, aviation, chemicals, all the stuff that just keeps everything going in our country. And to have that with critical minerals is key. People are now beginning to understand what the link is all about. The pressure from overseas. You mentioned ERA, I say it as IRA, but it's the Inflation Reduction Act. It's huge, right? And daunting. But at the same time, I see this as an opportunity for us, people like us who are passionate about this, to supercharge what we want to do. I'm trying to ensure, and I'm getting a huge amount of support, to accelerate our partnerships and our critical mineral agreements, being able to put together a task force and knowing that if they come up with recommendations, we're just going to have to deliver them. And that's from an industry perspective, a government saying, this is what you're saying we have to do, we're going to have to respond to it. It also means, Sarah, in the UK, like many countries, there's always a small budget to try and extract financial support from the Treasury. But because we're a part of something much bigger, it makes it a lot easier for us to try and get that financial support that we need. So I think the pressure from overseas is helping minds focus, which means everything that we've been writing about in corners is now front and centre. Europe as well, coming up with all sorts of acts in Europe, once again focuses the attention of the UK government. And for many of us, we probably came to this from a particular perspective. You are probably passionate about the environment, you're involved in critical minerals, or like me, you're passionate about security. We're being able to bring all these people together that were having different conversations in the UK and saying whether it's industrial resilience or whether it's about security, we're all trying to get to the same place. How can we pull in our expertise, our knowledge, and making sure that our partnerships are as strong as they can be, because decisions we take today are going to be the ones we rely on in about a decade's time.
Absolutely. I guess so that being able to bring together lots and lots of different disciplines and experts and nerds, as you just called us, which is great. I'll take that one. That's fine. So you mentioned, aspects, say, is the environment, security. Another conversation, especially within Europe at the moment, is around these changes that are happening within these policies, acts, strategies with regards to development and aid policy. Do you see that really coming into the discussion as well? And I ask that purely because I've heard a lot of that talk within the European context, for example.
I do, Sarah, but I think we need to remember that this is a business. It's a business that we need to make sure that continues to have strong ESG standards, and we cannot end up making decisions where we have certain businesses based in certain parts of the world meeting very extensive ESG transparency standards, which then makes it uncompetitive if they're dealing with countries and companies that don't. So my focus is to making sure that everyone understands it's a very sensitive, complicated business model. We have to, and we will do more, but we have to ensure that we don't make it so uncompetitive that not only are we then not getting the standards that we want, we end up relying on other countries and other companies that don't reside by our values to end up monopolizing the place again, which isn't where we want to be as well. I must say that just I'm aware we're going to run out of time, but COVID was a clear example of what happens when supply chains are broken. And then you've got issues whether you've got IRA or whether you've got issues about particular countries like China around the world having a huge amount of sort of access to the minerals that we need. We need to find a middle ground that works for us, that works for our businesses, so they can continue to do the work that they do, that enables us also to drive back value back into those communities. So it makes it easier to explain to the public why we're doing what we're doing in the countries overseas, but why we need to continue exploring and sharing our knowledge so we can build the products that they want to buy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So to attempt to summary and allow you to get on with your day, because thank you so much for joining us here today. It's about trust. It's about transparency. It's about making sure it means something to people and perhaps not being scared to be the geek or the nerd, say, actually, I really care about this stuff and everybody needs to know about it. But also, I think something for me that came through there was when you are publishing a strategy or whatever it might be, publish it in the right place so it actually has the biggest impact it possibly can.